With the photobiomodulation on the brain, it's fascinating that it can help with depression and anxiety. Have there been any studies on, autism, Asperger's, ADHD, conditions like those?
Yeah. So there's a couple of ladies have a company in America that are doing a trial on autism in little kiddies. So they did some pilot studies and found that little kiddies, 3, 4, 5 years old, responded very well. So now they're doing a trial, and talk to them. They seem to think it's going well. I think for ADHD, it's probably just anecdotal. Occasionally you get a case report sort of thing. But you would expect that, in little kiddies whose brains are still sort of forming all the connections, that the light would be quite powerful in these. If there is some sort of magical way that the photobiomodulation can get the brain connections to develop how they're meant to develop.
That's I wasn't so much aware of the way that red light influenced the wiring of the brain so much, but it seems so. Do you think that it might be working through that mechanism in these conditions?
I think that's part. Yeah, we also showed in mice that you could stimulate the growth of new brain cells from progenitor cells. So there's parts of your brain, the dentate gyrus and the subventricular zone, that have these progenitor cells. And these can develop into functional neurons, which can find their way to where they're meant to be. Now, this is not a common process in adults. I mean, it happens, but certainly we showed the light could accentuate this. And this is why you can repair damage from a stroke and a TBI. But insufficient neurogenesis has been linked with all sorts of brain conditions, all sorts. So insufficient synaptogenesis, insufficient neurogenesis, excessive neuroinflammation, depressed mitochondrial metabolism, insufficient cerebral blood supply. I mean, all these run through an astonishing number of different brain disorders. The single most important molecule you can have in your brain is BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And we showed that we had upregulation of BDNF after photobiomodulation. And, and that could be an important mechanism.
When I was speaking to John Metrofanus, he mentioned that you had said possibly the most important molecule in the brain is BDNF, and he seems to agree with you. What role is photobiomodulation playing on modulating BDNF in the brain?
It's increasing it. Quite why? I mean, who knows? I think it's probably something to do with the neuroprogenitor cells. But they respond to BDNF. Which cells are actually producing it, I don't think we know.
That's fascinating. I know mostly of BDNF from doing exercise and upregulating it in the brain that way. But
well, and that's linked with ROS. So, undoubtedly, photobiomodulation produces some reactive oxygen species. Generally, not a lot, not enough to do any damage, and probably only briefly. But that also, as you say, applies to aerobic exercise. So I even wrote a bit once that in some ways, photobiomodulation could be considered as an exercise mimetic, that it produced lots of the physiological effects of aerobic exercise without the hard work.
Yeah.
You probably want both together, actually.
Yeah, I think so. I think so too. But it's nice to have both of those tools in the toolbox for sure. Um, how about just photobiomodulation for general cognition? I've seen. I think it was a paper that you co-authored that showed that using photobiomodulation on the brain helped with making cognitive tasks seem easier to undertake.
Yeah. Yeah, the idea about that was it was a very complicated memory task. And, obviously when Agnes designed the study, she was probably expecting people to do better on the task, because that's generally what these folks do. But what she found was the subjects were not better at doing the task, but in order to do the task, they consumed a lot less oxygen and glucose in the brain. So it was easier to do the task. They didn't actually get better at it, but it was easier for them to do it.